Okay, yeah, we're live. Now to go live, please. Oh, it is. It worked. Awesome. Okay. Now, because you know what's happening now? Instagram just allowed streaming.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's really changed the game on top of followers.
I didn't
Okay.
realize that.
Yeah, it just happened. I'm trying. See, I see people, but now where are we? Okay, here's our studio. Okay, folks, right now who are watching, if I will you do you see us now? Someone on Instagram just say you see us. Raise your hands. Oh, I know why. Okay, so I have to change the page. If I don't see y'all, maybe I'll just do my bootleg streaming. But we're about to start because Dr. West probably got mad interviews today. That's what it means when you run. So I'm still gonna do my school way. Actually, fam, I'm gonna have to go to the phone. The delay is gonna mess up the audio. We'll try this part, but we're about to do it now. Okay. I'm gonna end that part. The audio is not good. Okay, let's go. All right. Y'all know. Bootlegging for now. Next interview, I'll know. Okay. Woo! Here we go. Dr. West!
My dear sister, you know it's always a blessing for me to be in conversation with you. You inspire, you instruct. Straight out of Puerto Rico, South Bronx, distinguished scholar at University of Massachusetts Amherst, at National Hip Hop Political Organization, and we ain't even got to the Malcolm X Grassroots Action Committee. What a witness! What a work life, my dear sister.
Doc, you know more about me than I can remember now on my well, again, it's a blessing to see you, and I really want such a good following of younger Afro Latinx, Black Latinx folks. Um, and something really dope actually happened in Puerto Rico today. They finally passed their version of the Crown Law. So now in Puerto Rico, Afro Boricuas can't be, if they can wear their hair as afros, natural locks, and all that, because there was still obviously discrimination on the island against Black Puerto Ricans when they go to work. So I was like, oh, that's fascinating because I know what that meant here, and I know what it means for a new generation of Black Boricuas, Afro Boricuas in Puerto Rico that are just emerging as amazing young leaders, and I feel like this is the road to independence in all the ways.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I know last time we were talking, I was telling you that I was blessed to be with Sister Laura, the sister of Abisos Campos.
Yeah.
And we were on stage together, reflected together, and I was on fire because Abisos Campos resides in my heart.
Hmm.
What a freedom fighter. It's not just number one in his class at Harvard Law School, but they wouldn't allow him to speak because of his color and because of his fundamental solidarity with anti-colonial struggles in Puerto Rico. But then he goes on to do what? Sacrifice everything in the name
His
of
life.
truth,
Yeah.
justice, love. And Laura is just such a, I know she died, just recently, but that was one of the high moments for me being on the island there with Brother Samuel Cruz and so many others who I went down to be a part of the struggles there in Puerto Rico. Indeed, indeed.
I love our people, and you know it.
Oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. Ella Baker, the great black freedom fighter, she ended her life working for Puerto Rican independence,
She
Lolita
did.
Lebron, and so
I
many
didn't
others.
know that. I recently was reading that, like, because I don't know why that history is not well known. I mean, I could kind of guess. There's like when my parents were born there, my mom left pretty early. My abuela brought her with my abuela's 15 other children. My abuela
Mm,
has 16 children.
Lord,
And
God bless her. God bless
yeah,
her.
and most of them then ended up being raised in Youngstown, Ohio. But I've always asked my dad, like, Dad, why didn't I know this? Or I don't even know why I didn't know I was a citizen. I just was like, I'm Puerto Rican and that's all. And my dad was telling me something that the independistas used to say is nobody wants independence for Puerto Rico except that night because the repression.
Oh,
If you wore
right.
certain clothing for 20 years, we couldn't fly our flag, all of these things, right? So the independentista movement really had to go on the underground. But first, again, thank you for being with me. I know you're running hard. What When did you make the decision to run for president? And then why did you switch from the Green Party to now as an independent candidate under the Justice for All banner?
Yes, no, indeed. Well, shoot, I'm just learning from you and Sister Cynthia McKinney. That was a historic run to have the two brilliant, visionary, courageous black women who were on the same ticket. And it had to do with what? A break from the two-party system, a critique of the corporate duopoly and how both parties are tied to war, tied to Wall Street, tied to Silicon Valley, tied to occupation and domination of so many people in the global South. And what does it mean to take that kind of struggle seriously in the narrow confines of American electoral politics? And so I decided to run that. I've been at it now for 14 months. Can you believe it?
It goes
14
fast.
months every day. But I can tell you one thing. I'm glad I was a long distance runner when I was young, getting up in the morning and putting in 10 miles, because to be a long distance runner in this particular freedom struggle, now of course it's a lifetime. I've been running for justice for 55 years, just
Absolutely.
like I've been running for Jesus for 62. But we ain't gonna get into all of that right now. They just overlap. You know what I mean? So that the running for justice now spills over into electoral politics, and it really is a critique of the organized greed that we see in the predatory capitalist processes that permeate both parties, the thickness of the corruption of both parties very much tied into not just their donors and their benefactors, but won't say a mumbling word about Palestinians undergoing genocide, won't say a mumbling word about poor people in the U.S. empire, won't say a mumbling word about poor people in the Caribbean, including Puerto Rico.
So why did you switch from the Green Party?
Yeah, the Green Party was very kind. And Sister Jill and Brother Ajama were very kind for me to invite me in, because I started initially with the People's Party and I left right away. And I was glad to be with the Green Party because you can always learn a lot about people who have been involved in this for a long time. But I discovered very quickly, my dear sister, that I couldn't really be my full self in the Green Party. It didn't fit. And there is no party really in the country that is fundamentally committed to a struggle against the vicious legacy of white supremacy as a primary end and aim in its relation to capitalism, its relation to colonialism, and so forth. The Green Party, I felt, had a number of anti-racists in the party, but when you actually came to those who were someone like myself, who comes directly out of the black freedom struggle that makes white supremacy central, I think a number of them felt as if I was a little too much into what they call identity politics. I say, no, this ain't no identity politics. Now, my critique of capitalism is as vicious as yours, but I begin on the chocolate side of town, and most of y'all don't. So it was a different sensibility going on there. And I felt that I had to be free enough. So I became independent. And now, as you know, we got Justice for All. We already got 12, 13 states. We're going to have a good 20, 25, 30 by the end of the summer. And so we've been able to, in some ways, generate as many ballot access to various states as the Green Party itself. And then I had my own various clashes on a personal level with Jill Stein. We won't get into, but I mean, I know you. Have you had a chance to write extensively on your experience in the Green Party?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so meticulous of keeping every email and things, so I have boxes. Like I even have all the when they send you the document that now you're on a ballot.
Right.
I have like just hundreds of those that I collected. Yeah, so after I finally get doctor in front of me officially from UMass, I am gonna start working on the memoir. But look,
Ooh.
when I saw you were running, I was like, that's not gonna last that long.
Is that right? You said that right away.
No, I mean,
Wow.
look, I think one of the last times we were together marching where the Green Party put it was in Pennsylvania. It might have been like 6, 7 years ago. I remember
Mm,
Alicia was there, Immortal Technique. It started
right.
like
Right. Do it.
crazy.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
that's the day that one of the white men of the Green Party literally put his hands on me.
Oh.
And justice was there, and it was like, this is going to be bad right now. And I went up to somebody and said, as badly as you have all treated me, I have stayed true to you. And it just constant macro aggressions, And then when Jill and John, ran, it's not that I didn't support them, as I was being critical of the apparatus of the party. But when you say you couldn't be there without being your true self, I mean, this is also a party where one of the states actually took me and Cynthia off the ballot. And the responses were, she's too black radical. And for me, they were like, you're not even black. Why are you calling yourself that? Yeah. And I tried for a couple of years, after even thing in Pennsylvania. And then I was like, yo, I'm done. Like, I'm done. You
Wow.
know,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Sister Rosa.
no,
I
of
didn't
course you
know
did it,
that.
because I really haven't, because it's still
Wow.
so angering. Because you know what I wanted from that run, well, as you know, I ran on the hip hop political agenda. Um, I just was like, here's the thing, I'm running on that. The young people were fine and all of that. And I was like, now seeing where we're at, the fact that so many young people are like, we're done with both parties and the duopoly, I was like, that's maybe me and Cynthia had a little something to do with that. I mean, but it was also 16 years ago. But, I knew, I was like, yeah, Dr. West is going to go somewhere else. And when he does, I'm going to have his back 100%. So,
Wow. But see, I didn't know that, my dear sister. I really didn't because I mean, I had supported both Jill and Brother Jamu, and I've always thought that Jamu was, connected to the rich legacy of Stokely Carmichael and Kwame Ture and so
I
forth.
did. I did vote for Jill and Ajamu because Ajamu has been a mentor of mine. That Pennsylvania thing, I think that's when Sherry was still running. Sherry Hall.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. I hear
But
you.
with that said, I think this is one of the most important things that people don't understand, that I keep saying. If we can get 5% of the electorate that votes, we become permanently on the ballots. And I think to this day, there's not enough voter education. People just assume you run your own 50 states. We know that's not true. You have to fight every state to get access. You got to double the amount of names, because usually the Democratic Party, not even the Republican, are going to challenge that.
Right,
But
right.
and so, being in contact with Melina all the time, I'm like, y'all already doing great. So with that said, the game has changed now, right? Like
Mm,
on the
I hear you.
Democratic front.
Absolutely. And I hope and pray you do have our dear sister Melina, Dr. Abdullah, just
I had
one
her.
on one like this.
I had it last 3 days. No, 3 days ago. Yeah, I had her on.
Oh, is that right?
On Monday. I didn't really edit it yet. I ran it kind of
Oh,
live.
okay. I was looking for it. Okay, no,
Yeah,
that's
I'll send you the
oh,
link
you're
of
so
it.
kind to have both of us like that, though.
Oh
That's
no, of
dynamite.
course. I mean, that's
That's
my sister.
dynamite.
Like
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's
Melina
beautiful.
was like, I'm telling my mom and you, what do you think? I was like, let's go, girl. Let's do it. You know,
Lord, Lord. Well,
but
you know
what
how blessed we are to have her as part of this campaign, and how blessed I am to have her as a running mate, putting a smile on the face of Fannie Lou Hamer and the others. I tell
and
you.
as a comrade through and through, man. Melina, that's a whole book I told her on just that.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
So you see Biden step aside,
Yeah.
analyze from your perspective, not how it went down, but now that the presumptive nominee is Vice President Harris.
Yes, yes. Well, I recall that your powerful analysis of Obama mania in 2008. Now we're gonna have Kamala, Kamala mania in the same way, because so many folk are getting attracted to, in some ways seduced by what looks to be such a colorful and different alternative to the old man Biden. But you see, the same forces are behind the party. That Kamala Harris is as tied to APEC, as tied to Wall Street, as tied to Silicon Valley, as tied to imperial policies abroad. Silence about mass incarceration, silence about the plight of the poor. We can go on and on and on. So the challenge is going to be, how do we remain constant and consistent in our commitment to poor and working people, to tell the truth, to be committed to the justice, and keep the love at the center of it, at a moment in which so many folk, especially black folk, are going to be in a frenzy. And for me, it's always a beautiful thing when I see black folk and other oppressed folk full of joy. Hey, that's like the church and the nightclub and the beauty salon and the barber shop. All that joy, that's beautiful. Like a concert at Kendrick Lamar or something, right? You see all of that love flowing, but the question becomes, what kind of moral content does it have? What kind of political courage does it require? What direction is it headed in terms of its vision? And to see that kind of black joy and that black ecstasy being mobilized by a corporate dominated Democratic Party that has sold out black folk over and over and over again, and then to see so many of its collaborators, so many of the black folk telling lies. I don't mind folk who will say, well, Trump's a gangster and a fascist, thoroughgoing. Absolutely. No doubt about that. You know, any opposition to Harris is not pro-Trump. Well, that's what's being cast as. No.
Exactly.
That's not the case. Don't. Well, if you're critical of her, you must be getting paid by Fox News. No, quit lying on me. But at the same time, y'all got to quit lying on Biden and her.
Right.
Biden wasn't no great president. He wasn't no excellent president. He's a genocide enabler. He's a genocide denier. He's a warmonger. He supported the invasion of Iraq. 500,000 Iraqis dead. Those are precious human beings. We never say a word. He's the architect of the mass incarceration regime. That was a crime against humanity.
I mean, we still have brothers and sisters and young people. Well, they're not young, locked up, specifically with that juvenile justice part, you know, of that. And I do.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
It is distressing to see where one day you were hardcore genocide in Gaza since October 7th, and the next day you're like all in for Harris. And that itself has been like,
that's true.
You know,
what is going on?
What is happening here? You know, now I also feel like it's specific African American experience of women, and I don't want to be like the one pouring the salt or being like, you know, I get it. I get it. Like my daughter called me. She's like, Mom, who do I vote for? I said, Boo, will you vote for who you vote? And she's like, Kamala is running. And I said, okay. You know, I said, read the platform. And then we're going to get up this weekend. We're going to talk about that, you know, but I don't even think she has a platform right now. And that to me is like, I'm waiting to see what that DNC speech looks like. But people are also like, she raised $119 million in 2 days. I was like, all these black and brown people raise $119 million. Where have you been raising that money for your local community? And why does she need $500 million? That it's just like, this is the insanity of this corporate duopoly. But I also think with our people, right, we always come with love in a way. We're like, we can make changes here. And I'm like, no, she's not. She heads the Democratic Party. Like, change is not going to happen there. But what are you going to, how has that been for you? Because also you'll begin to hear this. If Trump wins, it'll be because the third parties.
Exactly. Exactly. Can
That's the
you?
question that people ask me the most. So if you could talk about that.
Well, I mean, one is that you got such deep white supremacy and male supremacy, not just in the society, but in the Democratic Party itself. And so there's going to be a number of folk who cross over and ain't got nothing to do with third party candidates, third party activity. There's going to be a lot of shifts within those particular voters who always vote either Republican or Democratic. Now, you know better than I, 38% of U.S. citizens don't vote at all for the most part. And we got a strong appeal to a significant slice of those just to get them involved for the first time, the same way you and Sister Cynthia were able to try to reach out and do that 16 years ago, right? In addition, though, the idea that any one candidate is responsible for somebody else's loss is an illusion. If we put out the best vision that we have, the best policies we have, and people decide, there's going to be a number of people come up to me and say, Brother West, I love you, man. I heard your vision. I'm going with Harris. Okay, that's it. Lift every voice. That's our anthem. It ain't follow the Pied Piper. You think about it, you think critically, and you go that way. But that's not a matter of me stealing or them stealing. Some
Right.
will come to me, hear my vision, say, Brother West, I'm with you. I want to vote my virtues. I want to vote my values. I want to vote what I really, really believe, and I believe in what you stand for. They vote for me. I'm not stealing that vote from anybody.
Yep.
People are deciding in that way. And so we have to get away from this corporate media that claims that somehow Kamala is entitled to every black vote, every woman's vote. Now, I'll say this, of course, that as a human being and as a black man, I am going to always defend and in a non-paternalistic way, even protect any black person who is attacked in a racist or a sexist way.
Right.
You see, so if I see Sister Harris being attacked in a racist and sexist way, I'm going to fight that. That's a matter of principle. That doesn't mean I agree with her policies. I'm in principle against racism and sexism, against white supremacy, male supremacy. And she's going to be attacked in that way. And therefore, she is to be defended based on principle. But I'm going to critique her when she can't say a mumbling word about 14,000 precious Palestinian babies who have been murdered. And we know if those babies were white, if those babies were Jewish, and if the perpetrators were black or Muslims or Arabs, there'd be the opposite response of Congress, the opposite response of Harris. And a lot of times the question goes even beyond what they say in the speeches, It's really the money too. You got to follow the money. Most of the money that she's receiving is not coming from black folk. Black folk don't generate $119 million in 2 days.
One day, yeah. I mean,
One
that's
day.
That's a lot.
No. She got that 1.5 from those 44,000, lovely black sisters who are fired up about her. A lot of them tied to the AKA and the Deltas and so forth. Hey, we understand those are part of the black community. But then the brothers came back the next day with 53,000 less money, 1.2 million. Now that is black money, but that's different than 119 million.
Yeah.
No, you got to go to Silicon Valley and Wall Street and the billionaires and multi-millionaires for that. And I'm concerned about, will her policies in any way speak to the suffering of the poor and working people, not just here, but around the world?
Yeah, and I mean, I was the same when I was running. Like somehow me and Hillary Clinton ended up on like a local radio show together, and the host started like asking me about like her looks, and I was like, hold up, dude. I was like, I'm against every policy, all of that, but I will not allow patriarchal misogynistic responses. And I think that people need to know that, right? It's like, I think young people need to know, you don't have to just hate or whatever. That's where you stand, but we're not also going to allow, as you said, attacks, because they're already starting. what's going on in the Trump campaign. They just ratcheted up, as usual. So I'm so glad to hear that, because that's important that we
That's
do that.
very, very, and even beyond that too, I still have a love for people. I have a love for black folk, even when I have deep disagreements with them, because I'm still fighting for them. They
Right.
might not even see it. They say, Brother West, how you fighting for us and you're not voting for Harris? Well, I got a different analysis of things, but everything I say and do is rooted in trying to empower the least of these, coming out of 25th chapter of Matthew. And that means I'm going to be consistent. And so you don't love black folk in order for them to love you back. You love black folk because they're worthy of being loved. And that's true for oppressed people around the world. But you're being clear about your differences, but you're also being clear about your moral compass. We don't put up with racism, sexism in any form. I don't put up with homophobia and transphobia in any form. But I'm going to disagree with a number of folk who might be gay or lesbian, who might be women or black women or Latino women and so forth, especially if they're on a bandwagon that is at the moment denying and enabling genocide. You see, that's the bottom line. It's like, hey, the litmus test doesn't get any lower than that. And you just had the gangster of gangsters in Congress speaking, and folk get 40 standing ovations. Good God. How low can you get and go?
You know what? That's because I just listened to it before I watched Democracy Now, and then I listened to those speeches. So, folks, you should go to Democracy Now and just watch what the Prime Minister Israel said. I mean, first of all, you're not the president. Like, why do they keep inviting you back? Second, when he said what he said, Iran is using your useless misfits of protesters, and then just lie after lie after lie. And, honestly, for me, Rashida Tlaib has been the only elected official in the Congress that has stayed true to her path. She went, fam. She went. Every other people boycott, but she went holding that war criminal sign. They couldn't do anything about it.
Turn it around and say guilty of genocide.
Well, when the rest of them started clapping for, like, the sister that was analyzing said all they want now is annihilation. That she was saying it's going to take even 15 years to clean up Gaza. But you have always been supported. You've been there. How do we? Again, I'm always like the younger cats in my life, my cousins, brothers and sisters in the hood. How would you frame what's happening right now? It is annihilation, and also because the United States keeps arming them with weapons.
That's
but
right.
What would you say now about what's happening? And you have been there several times in the past.
I mean, one is even Sister Rashida has a challenge, of course, of holding that sign up, but knowing that the leaders in her party have been the enablers of the very things that she's opposing. How long can she hold on in terms of the truth and still dealing with practical challenges of power? And so it is for all of us. All of us recognize that all of our talk about truth and justice and love has to take on some concrete form. And the most concrete form right now is to hit the streets and go to jail, because so many of our politicians are paid off and they come in all colors, right? Pharaohs come in all colors. And by pharaohs, I'm talking about the real, the vicious ones and so forth. They come in all colors, because I know a lot of folks talk about Egypt and say, oh, you can't reduce pharaohs down to Egypt and Egypt to pharaohs and so forth. Well, I'm talking about the ones who are capitulating to oppression and domination and guiding that. And that's why that kind of break of the corporate duopoly for me is just, as you put it in your wonderful interview, you said it's not just an alternative, it is what? An imperative. You remember saying that in that interview?
Yeah, I do.
2008, July 2008.
I know, yeah. It's in a couple quote books. I
was checking that interview out. You asked if you all were on it. You all were on the cutting edge. And that's 16 years ago. You all were telling those kind of truths.
Yeah, you know what's been funny, because they keep saying Vance is the youngest vice presidential candidate, but I still hold that title because I was only 36,
You were
but
36 years old. Good God Almighty. But you
so
can see all the lies that people just say anything about Biden. You got all these black and white folk talking about how great he was. And you say, my God, are you talking about the same person?
I said
Jesus.
I said to my husband, I said, God damn it, if Baron Jones cries again, I will never watch the
Oh, Lord. You ain't like,
I'm like, what is
ooh,
happening?
the
What is
genocide enabler architect of mass incarceration. They couldn't even pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act because he wouldn't make a phone call to Mansion. And it was the black folk and black women that pushed him across the finish line, and they were still secondary and tertiary. But they get so comfortable on the plantation.
well, the
And I
money
keep
helps too, right? Like there's
and
a
the money's
that,
flowing and the status is
yeah.
flowing as well. You know, and you got to
And
tell
you're all
folks,
paid millions of dollars to be on TV.
yeah,
And
that's true.
you have
That's
no
true.
clue what's going on. So when you say inflation is better, I don't know because I'm shopping. How the hell do I have to spend $7 on 2 avocados?
Exactly. Or
You
even Brother Bernie, who you say to yourself, Bernie, this is getting more and more pathetic. He's such a transformational person tied to the working class. Right now, 62% of all Americans live paycheck to paycheck. You got levels of child poverty. You got levels of poverty that are just inexcusable. And you say the economy's in excellent shape. Quit lying. Oh, this was a selfless act. But no, he got pushed out. They pulled the plug. The money people pulled the plug. People in his own party was pushing him across a cliff, over a cliff if he didn't. And he ends up being this heroic figure who makes a decision based on the needs of the country as opposed to his own person. The lies become so layered, my dear sister, that
yeah, and
you think to yourself, how can the truth ever penetrate? Well, we believe truth crushed the earth shall rise again. No lies live forever. This is part of our movement. But at times you look around and you say, boy, these lies coming from the fascist Republicans and coming from the crypto fascist militarism of the Democrats. Is that all we have to offer? Is America addicted to self-destruction?
hmm.
And is the black movement simply a matter of movement on the plantation, even upward and thinking they on the Underground Railroad?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, don't lie to us. This ain't no Underground Railroad. This sister right here was the conductor of the Underground Railroad. She was getting black folk off the plantation. But a Democratic Party is a kind of plantation. And you see the Republican Party is a kind of plantation. And you see the black folk on the Republican Party, they kowtowing and buck dancing for their master. Then you see the Democrats kowtowing and bucktown and boot licking for your master. Well, who's going to call for the kind of freedom to get off the plantations as a whole? Even the Green Party can be its own kind of plantation in the leftist form if they're not treating black people with respect in the way in which they ought.
And they
Or
need us always. They take everything. So Trump, I don't know what else to say about him. I will say this, and I think this is a little nuance that probably a lot of people don't agree with me, but living in New York City in the 80s, seeing those billboards he put up to execute the Central Park Five,
exactly.
all the money he gave, the DA under the counter, like everything that he did. I obviously remember that. My dad always brought 3 papers home: the Post, the Daily News, a Vocero, a Diario. And I do remember having kind of a conversation with my dad, but that was so long ago. But what I told people is I think he represents like what in our communities will be like, oh, he's on the come up, right? Look, he was poor, but look at him now. He's with rappers. He was poor. He owns real estate. Look at him now, But there's sometimes when I listen to him, there's a couple of truths that come out. So, right, is DC a swamp? Yes, but you're still a white supremacist. Is is inflation high? Of course, you don't care about that, but you're saying something. And I think it's kind of that gangster mentality, like F you, I'm gonna do everything. And now with the Supreme Court, literally, he could go to New York Times Square and kill somebody and he will never go to jail. Like This, how has that changed, like him and the party with now this immunity? Because I'm like, y'all, this is the Supreme Court. That's the land. He could do anything. What does that anything look like if he gets back into power and become the 100 fascist dictator that we know he is?
Well, the thing is that, I mean, one, Trump's always been a gangster, and his father, became a millionaire by means of a whole host of ways, things we won't go into right now. But he's still a wannabe gangster, even with the bullet flying by his ear, And I don't want anybody to get killed and things, but at the same time, I recognize that he's been talking that talk for a long time. He's been using the language and rhetoric of political violence for a long time, you see. And chickens come home to roost. Now, I mean, as a Christian, I don't want anybody to be getting killed who's innocent. But the gangster mentality and the gangster behavior of Trump is but a sign and a symptom of a gangsterized society as a whole. And what is it about a gangster? They're not just cold and callous, but gangsters think they can say and do anything with no accountability. Right. It could be police killing Sister Sonia. It could be the greedy bosses at the workplace. It could be folk in larger civil society mistreating folk, thinking they can get away with it. That's what Trump represents. So he, in many ways, is the crystallization of the gangsterization of America. And America looks in the mirror and sees its gangster self. And a whole lot of folk like it because they figure the whole world is a gangster. Everybody's just trying to get over. Everybody's on the take. Everybody's for sale. Everything is for sale. Well, there's certain truths about that. It's true. The Democrats talk about the Republicans. All the Republicans are lying. They are relying. Fascists lie. But then the Republican Party comes back to the Democratic Party and says, what? You all are hypocrites too. You all are lying too. But some of those truths actually hold too. So what happens in such a situation? Well, if everybody gives in to lies and crimes and gangsterization, then fascism will take over. You don't fight fascism with its lies and crimes with Democratic parties, lies and crimes. It reinforces the cycle of lies and crimes. And if there's no truth breaking through and no justice breaking through at all, and that's where we are now for the most part, then all of us are going under, not just American empire, but the planet, because you got fossil fuel companies with their greed, allowing for the whole planet to go under based on their obsession with short-term gain. That's the ecological crisis. You got 1% of the population with 90% of the wealth and 3 individuals with wealth equivalent to 50% of the population in America. And you got New York Times columnists talking about the economy is excellent. How you going to have that kind of grotesque wealth inequality and say the economy is excellent unless all you're looking at is your little truncated statistics and lose sight of the human beings who are suffering beneath those statistics? That's our role. That's our role, to tell that kind of truth.
Let me just repeat what you just said. 3 people in this country have the amount of wealth that half of this population, which would be 150 so million people. I think that's very, very important that we keep talking about that. So this decision, right? There's been a slew of decisions from the Supreme Court. I think it really starts with Citizens United, which now allows for a massive amount of corporate money. The attack, basically erasing affirmative action, trying to gut the Voting Rights Act, obviously Roe versus Wade, which I want to get back to you. But I want to ask you this specific question around homelessness and unhoused people, that the Supreme Court now says it's a crime, to be outside and sleep, basically. And Sonia Sotomayor's dissent, she said sleep is an imperative. Like, this is insane. But to talk about the Democratic Party, so this morning, Gavin Newsom said he's going to enforce this order. He's going to enforce this law and is preparing major sweeps in Oakland, San Fran, and Los Angeles. So it goes right to your point. A Democratic governor is like, now I'm going to enforce this. Like, where else do you go? Like, that's what it is. What else are people supposed to do? You're not supposed to do that. Like, what the hell?
Yeah,
You know, and if it starts in Cali, which is the beacon and all the right-wing attacks, this is going to go everywhere else. What's happening on the border? It's
yeah.
always seems like they are just keep taking and taking and taking everything. And how long can a people sustain this these policies, these Supreme Court decisions? So your first 100 days in the White House, what would that look like
Well, the
for you and your vice
first thing is that I'm not going into the White House until everybody has a house. So, as example, concrete example, put me in a hotel across the street and tell every brothers and sisters of all colors, but keep in mind the nearly million folk who are unhoused and homeless, 40% are black. We 12.8% of the population. If I was just in Skid Row with Brother Pastor Q, you probably know Brother Pastor Q because he works closely with Melina as well. He's a wonderful brother, been there for a good while. Used to be a hip hop artist. Used to be a strong hip hop artist, but his heart and soul installed it. What does that mean? That means in anti-poverty, going back to the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, is the priority. We're going to wipe out poverty. Housing is a right. Healthcare is a right. Free education is a right. A safe community is a right. We're going to come up with new forms of public safety so we don't have to have these police, as Marvin Gaye would pull it, police trigger happy police. And I think Marvin put it in What's Going On. Accountability set in. It's a different way of looking at the world. It's through the lens of those Frantz Fanon called the wretched of the earth. It's the exact opposite of looking at the world through the lens of stock markets, of hedge fund heads, of greedy bosses, of patriarchs, of white supremacists. Right now is a grim, dim moment. Why? Because the empire is imploding. All the greed and the hatred, organized, weaponized, generates blowback. Chickens come home to roost, as Malcolm used to say. You're going to reap what you sow. You sow all that greed and hatred, it's going to come back on you. That's the history of the country. But there's always been a counterforce. And that's been the Black freedom struggle. That's been this freedom struggle across the board. And we're always told we're weak, we're feeble, we're naive, we have freedom dreams and can't be actualized. Whatever language they use against us, we say we're going to be true to ourselves and true to the best of our ancestors who poured into us levels of love and courage and integrity that no historical moment can take away. And we go down swinging, fighting, organizing, mobilizing, laughing, loving, partying, smiling, grinning, joking. That's the history of Black people at our best. We are great people.
Sorry about that. Sister Sonia Massey, obviously you just mentioned her, and I mean, I don't watch the videos anymore. I don't think I need to, but I saw the first couple seconds. It's like every time we get some sort of win against this police murderers and brutality, when you saw it, was it just like every time anything now gets you killed in your own house, your own apartment?
No, and it's over and over and over and over, and each one is distinctive and unique. But this is how the vicious legacy of white supremacy reproduces itself over and over and over again. And as you know, Sunday there's going to be memorial marches all around the country. But you're absolutely right. I mean, sometimes you just feel as if it's too much, but we still got to fortify ourselves. We still got to make sure that we put on the moral and spiritual and political armor that's required. I think in the 6th chapter of Ephesians, you got to put on the breastplate, the shield, the sword of faith, and keep hope in the form of hitting the streets and going to jail and telling the truth.
So I asked folks to drop some questions. It might be a little hard, but I wanted to just a,
Sure,
a
sure.
couple more things. Roe versus Wade. I think if that was men's reproductive rights being taken away, everything would have burned down right now.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, if men could have babies, then the whole discourse would be qualitatively different. The patriarchy is so thick and the misogyny cuts so deep in the discourse that the notion of women having control over their bodies too often is viewed as a threat. And that's sad. That it really is sad.
And thinking about it when talking, to men, right? And a couple, there's brothers always like, gender's not first or whatever. And I'm like, let me tell you something. This is more than abortion. This is reproductive rights. This could literally lead us to a time where maybe certain men won't be allowed to procreate. Maybe if you were a man in prison, you come out. The one way you come out because they see you as poor or working class or you've been incarcerated, they're gonna force you to get sterilized. I mean, like I am a Handmaid's Tale kind of like is happening like in this fiction, but I really believe that, and I just wish that more men would understand that it's the control of our bodies, whatever that body is, however you gender it. This is more dangerous than people think. I mean, that is the one thing Harris has been good on that. But
Yes,
again, like, this should have been codified so long ago.
absolutely. That's the thing about it. And they had a chance to do it. They had a chance to do it under Obama.
Yeah, and didn't they just could have done it again now? I could have been reading something wrong, but I'm gonna turn to this in 1 second because this is my kind of because I know you have to be. Thank you for all this time. I would assume then that you would support, as president and at the UN, finally the decolonization process for Puerto Rico.
Oh my
That was the
God, yes.
legislation, right?
I'm walking in with a picture of Albizu Campos and Lolita Lebron.
I
Oh
know. I
yeah.
just want to make sure.
Oh, absolutely.
In seeing Puerto Rico, because you stay up with everything, what I have found after Hurricane Maria is like that was the moment where, the elder generations, like, we're obviously not citizens. You threw paper towels at us and you didn't help us. Because when I went down there with our crew, that's what all the older people were like, we thought we could never do for self. And so I think everything in Puerto Rico is so much more revolutionary. There are people that I know that are rematriating back, my parents one day, me and all of that. But because of the struggle, how have you seen it especially the last 2 or 3 years, and the young people really first being able to be like, I'm a person of African descent. Not all Puerto Ricans are white and look like J Lo, but
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
right.
The West Side Story image has been shattered, and it is now much more grounded on the chocolate side of town, which is to say
Yep,
the African origin. That's where we all come from now.
absolutely.
It's the rich African origin. And you see, we could listen to some Hernandez and Flores old school. At the same time, we could listen to Sarah Vaughan and Nat King Cole old school. And as it develops into rhythm and blues and hip hop and so forth, same legacy, African backdrop, colonized context, taught to hate ourselves, taught that we're less beautiful, less intelligent, and less moral. And then here comes the awakening. Here comes the reckoning with our humanity, and we see all these vicious white supremacist lies that we internalize, and the male supremacist lies we internalize, and the colonial lies we internalize, and we extract it. And when you extract it, you take that fear out. And what breaks the back of fear? Love. Love in the form of struggle, love in the form of solidarity, love in the form of sustaining each other in relationships. That's what is required. That's what this Love Supreme Coltrane is all about. And Coltrane got a whole lot of Afro jazz shot through him from Chico Ferro. Of course, Arturo, the brother, he and I actually won a Grammy
I'm
2 years ago.
yeah.
I won't go into it, but I love Arturo. But his father,
Yeah,
Chico and Disney, founded Afro Latin, come out of Cuba as well as Puerto Rico and other places.
yeah. I'm gonna have you back, folks. It'll be yeah. It ended because it's 1 hour, but the other ones are streaming, so we're gonna wrap up. So when you said the word fear right now, I think that's what's happening. The fear mongering if you don't vote the right way, you know, and I think we just have to tell people, if this was truly a democracy, there would be many parties, everyone would be on the debate floor, but to vote out of fear, you should never have to do that, because that's how people in Russia vote. That's how people in despots vote, right? Like, you're going to vote so we could have the image that you voted, but you know, you're not even putting anything in the box. So as we wrap up, what would be at this moment that you would say to particularly this generation, I think has totally been awakened, really are like, how do we end this duopoly? But what does it mean to live in this society where it seems it is coming, you know, it's here, the fascism in here. And honestly, I don't really believe in God, but I'll say, God forbid this dude gets back in. Everybody just be ready. But what would be your message to young people at this moment?
I mean, for me, you start first at the existential personal level. What kind of human being do you really want to choose to be from the short move from your mama's womb to tomb? Do you really believe in integrity, honesty, and decency? Do you really want to be a courageous person that's tied to truth? Then you move to the institutional level. Then how do you manifest that? What organizations, what affiliations will reflect your deep commitment to integrity, honesty, and decency, and truth telling and justice seeking? And then the larger question is, what would your grandmama say in terms of the kind of quality of character? Not necessarily a political position, but quality of character to you being true to yourself. And what do you want your great grandchildren to say in terms of what you did at this moment? Because you always have to make decisions bigger than your ego, bigger than just yourself, that you were shaped by forces in the past, the present, and the future. And part of the problem living in the American empire is we don't make the connections with the global South. We don't make the connections with Latin American, Caribbean, and Africa and Asia. We're making decisions, raising our voices in relation to their struggles, not just the struggles in America. Yes, we're concerned about our hoods and neighborhoods. Yes, we're concerned about our barrios and so forth and our reservations. But our destiny is connected to those of others too. If we can't be concerned with what's happening in Haiti, what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in Congo, what's happening in Gaza, and we can go on in that regard. Those are the levels that we have to keep in mind in terms of how we raise our voices, raise our votes, but most importantly, live our lives. And in some ways, our deaths. You die one time, how you going to use it?
Yeah, and forgive me for this follow-up real quick.
Sure,
again, I hope to have both of you back again. The situation on the border. I mean, I think I know what you would do policy-wise, but what would you do?
Well, one, you got to decriminalize it. You got to demilitarize it. You got to make sure you treat people with humanity. You make sure you treat people with a sense of their human preciousness. Then you got to tell the truth about the context. When you think about border, we don't think about the border with Canada. That's an open border. Nobody says a mumbling word. Nobody says a mumbling word about that. No, We're concerned about the southern border, where U.S. policies in Central America and Mexico and others has created conditions such that levels of poverty and violence are so overwhelming, people want to go. Then you have the historical lesson. Mexicans want to come to Texas. Used to be Mexico. They want to go to California. Used to be Mexico. They want to come to New Mexico. They want to come to Arizona. All that used to be Mexico. How did Mexico lose 50% of its country? It was a criminal invasion. It was an immoral war of 1846. That Mexico had abolished slavery in 1829. But America wanted republics like Texas that was slave owning so that they can expand their slave owning greediness and mistreat black people. Well, we need to connect Cinco Mayo with Juneteenth and tell the story of the abolitionists that came together, the black soldiers who came together with the Mexicans in order to try to push out Maximilian, who was trying to reinstitute slavery in Mexico. Why is that important? Because it gives us the historical backdrop of what our precious brothers and sisters in Mexico, El Salvador, and Guatemala, Venezuela. We can go on and on and on, and the way in which U.S. imperial policies have so deeply shaped the realities of those nations. And then, more importantly, we just want to make sure that the folk who are trying to gain access to asylum and so forth are treated humanely, as I said before, who are treated justly, and not pit them against black folk in the United States, who are catching hell in terms of the black masses. Absolutely. Ain't no doubt about that, and I'll never deny that. And black folk should be treated in such a way that they have right to quality housing, right to education, because a lot of the tension has to do with, wait a minute, we've been here all this time, and the immigrants coming, and they get a chance to stay in hotels, and we out on the street. We can't stand this and pit it against each other. No, we don't want that kind of divide and conquer strategy used by those above. We want to be able to come together. We want solidarity, but we want to be mindful of the tensions, and we want to say that the folk who are already here, because many of us black folk been here 12 generations. That's a long time. I'm telling you.
But not long in world history. That's what we always tell our young people when we study history. True. Well, Dr. West, first and foremost, thank you, because I know y'all are running ballots and all that. I know what you're going through, And thank God I didn't have social media in 08. I don't think I could have survived the vitriol of everything right now, just the ugliness. And you try not to listen to somebody, but then you're always worried, like, everybody likes me, but this one doesn't, and why? And, I've learned through you and so many of my mentors, like Dr. Turner, James Turner,
the great James Turner, Cornel University.
I know, losing him.
Richard Perez.
Right, presente. Yeah, losing Dr. Turner, but I also lost Dr. Strickland and Dr. Bracy. These are people, we've losing our elders in Black studies. And I think when we get another one, I want to talk more about the academy and kind of other things, but I really want to thank you. I wish you and Melina safety. I text her every day just to make sure that she's safe. There's people out here that want to harm you. And I love you. And you got me in Justice's vote. I'll let you know.
Ooh, that means the world, but love you. I salute you. And we always empower each other.
All right. Love you, Dr. West. See you soon. Be safe.
Take good care now. Thank you now.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.